It's Saturday night,
The kids are in bed.
which means we did it. We survived another week.
So let's talk about it.
From our latest homebrew project,
To kids' crafting projects.
it's just talking life with two young kids and two dogs. Grab your favorite beverage, sit back,
Relax.
and see where the conversation takes us.
Sometimes we don't even know until we get there. This is the Craft Parenting Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Craft Parenting Podcast. I'm Joe Ludwig. We have an amazing show planned out for you this week. We're going to discuss all the adventures that we had, and then we are going to reminisce about the past Bockfests that we've been to. If you don't know what Bockfest is, then stay tuned, because we will break all of that down for you. But before we get to all that, an introduction is in order. With me here tonight is my lovely wife and co-host, Caroline. Hello, Caroline.
You know, you don't have to read all of the descriptions that I write down for you to read, right? But I am pretty lovely and awesome. We'll go with it. How you doing, Hubs?
I'm ready to podcast. What a week. Right?
Everybody's still alive, so that's good. We made it.
Yeah, that's always a plus when people are in our family unit is still alive.
Yeah, I mean,
And
you went
breathing.
back to work down in the basement. How'd that go?
It went. Monday was my first day back, and I had about 7 meetings.
Oh, yeah. Elliot got to attend 2 of those, though. So that was nice. He's a proper businessman now.
Yes. Yeah, you dressed him up in a little suit and you combed his hair over. He even wore sunglasses.
We'll roll with that.
It was a little Weekends at Bernie moment for him. So I'm going to throw that question back at you. I went back to work this week. How did that go from your perspective?
We made it. If Mom hadn't have come over, I don't know what would have happened. Because Lily is 18 months going on 18, getting into everything, thinking she can do everything. And then Elliot is still in that wonderful 4th trimester of, I have to keep you alive because you have no idea what you want out of life yet. So when one of them doesn't need me, the other one for sure does. Or they both need me at the same time. But I get lots of snuggles, so snuggles are nice. Not a lot of sleep, but snuggles.
Yeah, you need sleep.
Not I, said the tired mother.
Well, an absolute tragedy happened this week.
It was almost an absolute tragedy. I managed to save it to just a minor tragedy, but it was bad.
Yeah, so right at the beginning of the week, I dropped our sleep number remote.
I mean, it was probably like the 20-plus-ish time that it's been dropped. So it was making a rattling noise for like the last 2 or 3 months that should not happen.
I bet the toddler dropped it a couple times too.
Probably. She does like to go for remotes these days.
But the sleep number remote was completely destroyed after it was dropped.
Yeah. You managed to make your side of the bed go on. Because we turn it up to 100 every morning. Because we have a foam topper on it. And Joe came downstairs with the remote in pieces and was like, I got my sleep number to go, but I can't get the remote to go over to your side to make your side of the bed go. And I was like, oh boy. But if you leaned the remote just the right way, some kind of connection got made so the remote would actually work for like 5 seconds. So I laid in bed, fiddled around with the remote for 5 minutes, managed to set my side of the bed, which saved you from having to sleep on the couch until we got a new remote. Because I would not be able to handle sleeping on a super firm bed for a week. My back would murder me.
Your sleep number is like, what, 5 or something ridiculous?
It's 35. At one point, it was like 25, and that was probably a bit much. But it's so cozy.
So if you don't know what a sleep number is, the lower the number is, the softer the mattress, right?
Yes. And 10 out of 10 would recommend. They're not a sponsor yet. They should be, because I love them. Because if I have a bad back day, I can adjust my sleep number to whatever will make my back happy when I wake up in the morning. It's great.
If you are listening to this and you work for Sleep Number, call Elliot. He's the executive producer.
He'll tell you all about our sponsorship plans.
Yes.
He's great at that.
Well, anyways, speaking of tragedy, our oldest dog, Zoe, ate all of the shortcake that our neighbor recently baked for us. We had them on a paper plate on the kitchen table, I believe, and I was downstairs working. And
with Clara. So Clara was an innocent party in all of this.
She actually was. There are some theories going around that she instigates and is the actual perpetrator and when food goes missing. But I know for certain that it was Zoe, our oldest dog, who is going to be 7 this year. She still goes for food. She's very short and stocky, but when she's determined, she's determined. She can jump up and get food if she wants to.
If it's a banana or a carrot, she'll do anything in her power to get it. And then anything else is just icing on the cake. Sometimes literally. Though I do recall the time Buddy and Bella at your parents' house ate a whole sheet cake. That was ridiculous. So at least Zoe's not that bad.
I don't remember that.
I baked 2 cakes for Easter or somebody's birthday or something at your parents' house.
Okay, so it was a cake that you baked.
I either baked it or I decorated it.
I vaguely recall this now.
Cakes were placed on cardboard covered in aluminum foil on the oven. And in the morning, there was cardboard covered in aluminum foil on the floor and no cake. That was fun. But yeah, we were looking forward to those shortcakes as an after-park snack because I took my mom and the kids out of the house to get coffee and then head out to a park, which was probably way too cold to do it, but we had fun until Lily started to defrost. And then she wasn't happy about the pins and needles in her hand. But yeah, we come back home and there's paper plate on the floor. And I have 0 shortcakes to enjoy after my trek to the park with the children.
I'm sure they were wonderful, though. She for sure enjoyed them.
I wanted to enjoy them, though.
Well, she's always been very stubborn and determined, especially when there's food involved.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part husky in her. If she doesn't get what she wants, she will howl at you. Can I use this as an opportunity to give a shout out to our neighbor?
They're amazing. We've gotten clothes. We've gotten extra diapers. We got a toddler bed. Now, granted, I don't know how close their family lives to them or where they fall in the hierarchy of who is currently having children. Because, like, your older cousins are done having kids, so they dropped off a bunch of stuff. But their youngest is also a girl, and she's probably in 4 or 5T clothes right now. And Lily is in 2 and 3T clothes. Soon Lily's going to be giving her hand-me-downs. But they'll drop off clothes and diapers when they're like, oh, we have all these extra diapers, but our kid can't use them anymore, so here, have them for your kid. Or here, we don't need these clothes in our house anymore. We don't need these toys in our house. Take the things. And they're like, if our kids are playing outside, send Lily out because we know y'all need a break. She can play with the bean table. She can play on the trampoline. She can do whatever. We'll make sure she doesn't die. Really glad the weather's warming up.
The bean table was a really nice hack that we found out from them.
Yeah, I've forgotten a lot of my preschool stuff because I used to do stuff with preschool kids, not that often though, and like doing a lot of stuff with Girl Scouts, we get into like older versions of preschool things, but like sensory tables are super a thing, and Lily was about in tears when we had to take her away from their bean table. So I went to the restaurant supply store down the street from our house and bought 20 pounds of beans, which you said was crazy and probably was slightly crazy because 20 pounds of beans is a lot, but it fills up our water table quite nicely. I just need to find a tub to put them in when they're not in the water table. I think I've got one in the basement though, but Lily loves that. And I think Zoe likes to eat some of the beans on the floor. Hopefully that works out for her.
I try to supervise the dogs when they're out there.
Yeah.
But our neighbors are wonderful, so I just wanted to give a shout out to them. They've also made us several meals since Elliot was born, which we did not tell them to do. And these meals are not frozen pizzas or whatever, although I wouldn't say no to a good frozen pizza.
Even bad pizza is pretty decent. Usually. We made that sourdough crust pizza one day. That was kind of borderline, but that was more just like weird. Was not expecting. Would work good for dessert pizza, not necessarily pizza. Yeah, they made us some really yummy meals, and they're like, hey, I'm making pesto chicken tonight. Do you want some? Yeah, I'm not going to say no to pesto chicken. That sounds delicious.
It was delicious.
It was delicious, and I need to up my game on remembering how to cook. Because I did not cook the last 2 months of my pregnancy, unless it was like pop frozen thing in oven, because I was tired. And then running after a toddler when you're the size of Small Planet is not easy.
But I just don't want to talk about our neighbors, because it's not just them who have helped us adjust with another small human.
No, your mom's still been taking Lily 2 days a week. So Lily gets some one-on-one time. My mom's been coming over 2 or 3 days a week. We actually saw her 4 days this week because we went to the park together on Wednesday. But I don't know what I would do if she wasn't here. Once Elliot gets a bit bigger, I think things will get a little bit easier because he'll be on more of a schedule, but he has zero schedule right now. I do not know what he wants. It's just, oh, you were fine 5 minutes ago. Now we're screaming. Let's change you, feed you, burp you, see what happens. Oh, hey, you're happy now. Can mommy take a nap? No, Lily wants something. Okay.
My mom's been helpful. Your mom's been helpful. And then there's Larry.
Yeah, Larry, my stepdad. He's come over and done some projects around the house. Sometimes without him, our house would be a grinding halt of any kind of update progress.
It would probably be falling apart by now.
I mean, the previous homeowners did some really sketchy things, so yeah, it's a miracle that the house didn't fall down. But we fixed most of their mistakes. Knock on wood, we don't have anything else left to discover, because we've touched most everything in the house. We'll see.
Yeah, so both Larry and my dad have helped with several projects around the house since we bought it, and we can't thank them enough for their help and expertise. You mentioned my mom made us dinner. My brother made us a dinner as well. My mom also watched our dogs.
Yeah, she watched them for a week.
Yep, that was very helpful. Our friends brought us over king cake, homemade macaroons. Is that how you say it, macaroon?
There's a difference between macaroons and macarons. I don't think it's like an apricot situation. Like, there is a difference between the two things. I don't know. They were terrible. The next time they make them, they should just send them all to our house so no one else has to suffer.
I like that idea.
They are really yummy, especially for the first time they've ever made them. Like, they succeeded in it, which is supposed to be super hard to do. Now, granted, I didn't compare them with a professional bakery, but the professional bakery ones are expensive, so ain't happening.
My coworkers also sent us flowers, baby clothes, a dinosaur book that Lily is obsessed with.
Yeah, that's her dinosaur book, at least for the time being. Give it another 2 weeks and she'll forget that it exists. But we've gotten toys, we've gotten clothes, so many packages, which has been nice. People aren't like, let me see your baby right now because we want to see baby. It's like, hey, COVID is a thing. So maybe we'll talk about seeing you on your porch, but we'll just be kind of chill and just send you stuff in the mail. Lily got a really cute Easter dress today from my aunt and uncle in California. It's going to be adorable.
It is. It's very beautiful.
Flowers and Minnie Mouse on it.
We are extremely lucky to have that strong network of family and friends and our neighbors. So if you're listening to this,
know that we love and appreciate you deeply. I would be a way more hot mess than I am right now without the food and support that we've gotten.
Anyway, so what else happened this week?
Well, we're either in false spring or real spring. Cincinnati, Ohio River Valley, it's really hard to tell. I guess we'll see what happens in the next 2 weeks. Pretty sure we're in false spring now. But we actually ventured out and took Lily to a park 2 days in a row. So one day we went to a little park that just has a walking trail and a little toddler play area. It was probably a bit too cold to take her out of the house, but she had fun, didn't want to come inside, and then came inside and screamed because her hands hurt. Eventually we will learn the concept of this is what happens when you defrost, and Mom will remember to pack gloves.
It's not like she would wear the gloves anyway.
No, but at least then it would be all her fault, not my fault. But she's also 18 months, so she doesn't really know what she wants. So I was on Tuesday. On Wednesday, it was actually like a legit nice spring day. So I was like, hey, let's be crazy. And Mom, if you're not doing anything, do you want to meet us at the really nice park that's by your house that's going to be hopping? And she said, sure. So like an hour later, I finally managed to get both kids in the van and out of the house. And we went to the park down the street. Well, down the street from my mom's house. And it wasn't packed because we could actually park in the parking lot. If we couldn't park in the parking lot, that was going to be okay, we'll just find another park to go to. It'll be fine. And Lily had a blast. We were there for a little over an hour. She wanted to go down whatever slides she could get to, which were not a lot. There were like 3 or 4 slides that she could actually get to. The other ones, like, I'll have to take her up there because they're like up ladders and stuff, and she can't do that yet. They have a little maze. She ran through that. They also have like a little toddler area where they have a teeter-totter, but it's just a spring teeter-totter, so it's not a legit teeter-totter. She did not want to get off of that.
I saw the videos. It was very cute.
Yeah. She ran around a lot, really enjoyed the swings, and then napped for 3 hours, which was fantastic.
Yeah, it was nice.
But she is starting to not want to go down for a nap. Part of that is because we have been out of the house during nap time occasionally. So we went, like the day we went to the park, she fell asleep a little bit in the car, which meant it took a lot longer to get her to actually go down for a nap once we got home because she woke up. But then on Thursday, she was like screaming during nap time instead of actually going to bed. So we've been trying to put her in her toddler bed for nap time because I am not about that 2-crib life. 1 crib is enough. Not spending money on a second crib that will get used for like maybe 6 months. So we've just had to play the, okay, I'm not going to fight you anymore. You go in your crib, you'll scream for 2 minutes, and then you're just going to conk. And that's pretty much what she's done. But it does not sound pretty. She's fine, though. But fall spring is bringing out more wildlife, as the dogs discovered this week when I was in the middle of giving Elliot a bath. How'd that go?
Like you said, you were giving Elliot a bath. It was after dinner, and we have to let the dogs out still, because we feed them and then we let them out. Usually. I think that night we forgot to let them out.
They're fine. They're forgotten sometimes, but not for long.
Anyway, Lily was on her little stool while you were getting everything set up. She was completely ignoring the baby. She was supposed to be helping. And instead she was getting into all the clutter on our countertop.
It's a wreck in progress. I'm working on it. Clear away 3 things, 5 things show up. It happens.
I decided to take her with me downstairs to let the dogs out. And I was going to be gone 2 minutes tops. So I opened the back door. You know, we have a sunroom, so we go out the sunroom. Dogs zoom out, which is very unusual. Usually Clara is kind of skittish when she goes out, just because I think she remembers the fireworks back in July.
She is not a fan of fireworks.
Yeah. She's kind of weird about going outside. She doesn't like the dewy grass. She doesn't like fireworks. Sometimes I think she, especially last July when everyone had fireworks, I think she really associated going outside with fireworks for some reason. So she's been kind of weird about going outside. She eventually does go, but usually she's hesitant. But on that particular night, she was not hesitant at all. And Zoe and her zoomed out to the back left corner of our yard, which is fenced in, and it's dark. We don't have a lot of light back there. And they're just barking. Bark, 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 bark. And I go out and I'm looking at I'm like, what are you barking at? And I thought it was a cat. I'm like, oh crap. And our backyard is a muddy mess because it's been raining and the snow melted.
And we do have a few cats that roam the neighborhood because people think that outdoor cats are a perfectly acceptable thing to do.
Yeah, but it was weird because they weren't like attacking the cat or anything, the presumed cat. They were just kind of standing, keeping their distance, but barking up a storm. I'm carrying Lily. I'm holding her. And I'm like, what is that? And I look out and I see, eyes or whatever. So I'm like, what? And my phone, I try to turn on the flashlight on my phone. And it kind of looked, I didn't really get a good glimpse of it, but it didn't look like a cat. I'm like, oh, crap. So I rushed back upstairs. I'm like, Caroline, I need a flashlight.
Fortunately, we have small flashlights in our Midwest junk drawer. It takes a hot second to find them in the junk drawer. but they do exist.
No, I purposely put a flashlight in the junk drawer just in case something happened, like an emergency or something. So I grab that, I drop Lily off. Elliot's naked on the counter.
Still in the middle of bath time. I can't go anywhere because I have naked baby halfway through bath time on the kitchen counter. Everything is a hard surface. If he drops, not good. So I'm like, you do you. I'm going to finish this task. And if you need help afterwards, great. If not, even better.
Yeah, meanwhile, the dogs are still barking like mad. I've never heard them bark like that before, or at least not in a long time. So they're barking up a storm. I grab the flashlight, I go back downstairs, and I flash it in that corner, and it's not a cat. It's a big raccoon just sitting in that corner. Both Zoe and Clara are about 6 feet away.
They're good social distancing. They're good dogs.
They're following the CDC guidelines. Everyone should be proud of them. Zoe is not barking anymore. She's just staring like she's going to attack. And Clara's just like, bark, 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 bark. And I'm in my socks. I'm like, I'll just bite the bullet. So I run out into the mud and I try to grab Clara. It takes a few times to finally get her. Grab her by the collar. I drag her inside the sunroom. I rush back out and I see the raccoon slowly backing away from the yard. He's climbing the fence, but he's doing it backwards. It's really crazy. Like, this raccoon and Zoe are having a stare down.
I mean, Zoe is patient. She's not like some other dogs that'll just like go out full guns blazing. Now, she'll do that if she knows that there's a serious threat there. But like if there's a bird or a squirrel or something that she's trying to get to, she'll go slow, she'll be quiet. Other dogs are usually the ones who prevent her from getting something because they start chatting up a storm and scare the critter away.
Yeah, so this raccoon is like, I've made a huge mistake. And he's like trying to get out, I guess. But at the time I didn't know that. I thought, oh crap, he's going to go for the high ground and pounce. And I'm going to have to break up a fight.
I mean, he did learn well from Obi-Wan then.
Yes. He would have had the high ground. So I'm trying to prevent that from happening. I'm like, Zoe, come here. Zoe, here.
Our dogs know German. It's nice.
And she's, of course, not listening because instinct.
But none of the women in the house listen to you. We love you, though. Sometimes we listen.
And finally, I grab her, and we rush back inside the sunroom, and I look, and the raccoon's gone. So, mission accomplished, Zoe. We gave her an extra belly rub for that.
Yeah, I mildly forgave her for eating the shortcakes. I started talking to her again, so that was good. I didn't talk to her for a little bit.
Let's see, what else happened? You bought a Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, I wanted my own game system again. I have 2 or 3 old systems in the basement that we haven't plugged in a long while because we've got an Xbox on one TV and a PlayStation on the other. And I've been talking about getting a Switch for a while and finally decided to bite the bullet because I'm going to be home for another 7 weeks. I'm going to have time to game now. I might as well get something now. So I've been playing Animal Crossing because I'm basic. I love it. I'm eventually going to get some other games for it too. I just have to figure out what it is that I want and what I'll actually play. Probably Mario. I play a lot of Mario on my other systems. Eventually I'll plug the Super Nintendo back into the TV so we can play some old school Mario. That's like a once every 2 or 3 years thing that I do. Lily might like that.
What other games are you going to get? Is it just Animal Crossing?
No, there's a Mario game. I don't know if there are any Pokemon games. Maybe you'll play that if I get that. But, like, especially if I get, like, one of the Mario games, I can play that with Lily when she gets a little bit older. Because, unfortunately, we can't do the parenting life hack where you give the kid a remote that's either for a different system or doesn't have batteries in it, and they can pretend like they're playing the game, even though you know that they're not controlling anything. Lily knows when remotes don't work. She tried to bargain with Larry when they watched her one weekend, where they've had that house for a while. So they've got a bunch of old remotes that they don't use for anything anymore. So they made sure there weren't any batteries in them, gave them to Lily, because Lily likes to play with remotes. And hey, Lily was having a grand old time until she noticed that Grandpa's remote made the TV do things but her remote did not. So she handed Grandpa her remote and then held out her hand so he would give her his remote. Unfortunately, that did not work out for her. But she was like 16 months old at the time and already knew how to like attempt to reason with someone. And that's scary.
She is a smart cookie.
Yeah, we're going to be in trouble. So much trouble.
And like you said, she's starting to resist her daily naps. And she throws tantrums now, so that's fun.
Yep. She definitely wants her way. But she doesn't always know what she wants, so that's fun too. No, you do want something to eat, and that will make you feel better. Please don't throw all that stuff on the floor. Okay, we're just going to throw you in bed now and see what happens.
She shakes her head no a lot.
She does. And I think she now officially knows what that means. 3 months ago, I wasn't so sure. Now I'm pretty sure she knows exactly what she's doing.
Well, that was a long week, and we are grateful that it's finally the weekend. We are both enjoying an adult beverage. What are we drinking today?
Well, I made Elliot go out on his first beer run this week because Friday dropped Lily off at her Oma's house and picked up coffee at the local coffee shop that's by their house, which is really nice. Came home, chilled a little bit. My Switch came. That was exciting. And then scroll on Facebook to find out that Brink only has a little bit of their Bock beer left. And I'm like, ooh, Brink beer. Very yummy. Bock beer. Also very yummy. You made the same comment. So I was like, okay, are Elliot and myself going out on a beer run after I eat some lunch? The answer was yes.
I did not know that you also saw that Facebook post. That's really funny.
I know which breweries to keep an eye on. Now, Listerman, I think, is my favorite Bock beer, but they are a lot farther of a drive. They were one of the first Bock beers that I had, so wasn't really up for doing that. But Brink is not super far away, so picked up 4 crowlers from them, one of which was their Mama Said Bock You Out, which is actually a Doppelbock. It's 8.9% ABV, so it's a little bit more than a standard Bock. Their description says it's made with all German base malts and German Bock lager yeast, creating a strong, rich caramel malty flavor with some residual sweetness adding to the body, but mostly a clean lager profile, dark brown to reddish hue, which is pretty true. It's Doppelbock. It's delicious. I love me a good Doppelbock.
I can attest to that. It is extremely good. And on top of that, we are drinking our Doppelbock in our Bockfest glasses.
Yep.
I believe yours is from 2019 and mine is from 2020.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we do have quite a collection of Bockfest glasses, but I'm not sad about it. I mean, we did have to purge a ton of glassware at one point because we had a lot, and we still have a lot, but the Bock glasses got to stay.
We have from 2009 until 2020.
Yeah, because we got some from a friend who he was purging his glassware. His weren't as in good of condition as ours are, but that's okay.
Cheers to the weekend, and Lord help us in the week ahead, because starting tomorrow, we're going to have to do it all over again.
So, what do you want to talk about tonight? Other than the long conversation we just had about how crazy this last week has been.
I would like to talk about Bockfest because it is this weekend. I would like to reminisce about our past Bockfests that we've been to. And to be clear, it is happening this year. It's just a little bit different. But even if it was, this big event like in normal years, we wouldn't go with 2 kids.
Oh, no. Wouldn't be able to do it. I mean, it's different than years past. So Oktoberfest is very hard to define in Cincinnati. But if you're talking about downtown Oktoberfest, the quote-unquote main Oktoberfest celebration in Cincinnati, it takes place on 2nd and 3rd Streets downtown. They bring in all these tents. Bars downtown do things as well, but the main event is on 2nd and 3rd Street. downtown in front of the stadiums, and it's just all there. Bockfest has traditionally been Bockfest Hall and a bunch of bars in Over the Rhine. So we never really venture out to the bars in Over the Rhine. We stay in Bockfest Hall. But this year what they're doing is they're just focusing on the bars, and the same thing that Oktoberfest did, where they're doing take-home packages, which I wish I would have known about sooner, because I probably would have bought one. It has like some to-go beers in it and some food and some other Bockfesty things in it, because I'm going to miss the fact that we don't have a glass for this year. But no big Bockfest Hall thing. But I also don't really know what would have happened if COVID wasn't a thing, because Christian Moorline has gone really wonky in like the last 6 months.
They're going through a transition period, is the official PR terminology.
Yeah, so Christian Moorline used to be the main sponsor and the big host for Bockfest, at least in the last few years, though traditionally Bockfest in Cincinnati was started by Hudapol, because they were the ones that brought Bock beer back in 1993. They went and they said Bock beer used to be super huge in Cincinnati, because Cincinnati is very German. Like Milwaukee's German, Detroit's a little German, St. Louis is a little German.
Those are the big ones.
But Cincinnati is super encroached on their German genes. Like, there was a lot of mass hysteria during World War II, where a lot of neighborhoods got renamed, a lot of streets got renamed, because quite literally everything was German. And pre-Prohibition, it was, you couldn't throw a stick downtown without hitting a brewery or a bar or someone drinking a beer. I love Nation Burgers, which is a Cincinnati local burger joint named after Carrie Nation, who went across the country during Prohibition, or it was before Prohibition, and would go around with their hatchet and break open casks of beer and be like, yo, beer is bad, don't do this. So the legend is that Carrie Nation got to Cincinnati, took one look down. I'm going to say it was Vine Street, because Vine Street was ridiculous. It was like every third door at a minimum was a bar.
There were too many bars, essentially is what the urban legend says.
She took one look down Vine Street and said, this is too exhausting. I'm going to make it through 20 doors before I'm completely tuckered out. So I'm just not even going to bother. So she left. And pre-Prohibition, I want to say that Cincinnati was producing half of the beer for the country and was drinking a third of the beer for the country. Might be a slight exaggeration, but basically Cincinnati was drinking a lot of beer pre-Prohibition. We're slowly getting back up to those numbers, though. Maybe. We have a lot of craft breweries now.
The 1890s, the 1880s, we were producing a lot of beer, and we were drinking most of it.
And Christian Moorline was one of those big brewery companies where they actually took up 4 city blocks at a minimum with their operations, because they had their building where they were housing most of their workers, because that's what you did back in the day. They had their brew building, they had their bottling building / kegging building.
Which is now currently Rheingeist.
Yes, which is currently Rheingeist, which even if you're not from Cincinnati, odds are very high you've heard of, because they're really big on distribution. And they had an ice house, which was another city block.
Yeah, because this was before refrigeration.
Just that one brewery took up 4 city blocks in Cincinnati. And they had a ton of different beers that they made, one of which was a Bock. So back in 1993, Hudapol, which was still a thing, so it was Hudapol Shangling Brewing at that point. They wanted to celebrate the introduction of Christian Moorline's Bock beer back, because they hadn't been brewing it since before Prohibition. So they decided they were going to throw a party in Cincinnati. And since Bock is German for goat, well, we're going to have a goat on the can, and we're going to have goats involved with this party. And Arnold's is the oldest saloon in Cincinnati. So old that they don't have a TV. They don't want to put a TV in their saloon. They've got a really rockin' kitchen, though. And mutual friend of ours, friend of a friend of ours, she is the chef, or at least she was the chef at Arnold's. I'm not sure if she's moved around again since then. She was actually on TV as part of a cooking competition. They brought in a TV so they could show the cooking competition in their bar, and then promptly got rid of the TV. So they only brought in a TV for that one thing. Do you remember that? Because that was crazy.
I don't think we went.
We didn't go, but like, do you remember that was the thing that happened? Because talking to our friends, they're like, yeah, this is really cool. And then we helped teach her daughter how to swim one summer at their pool. That was fun too. So they decided they were going to do a parade from Arnold's, the oldest bar in Cincinnati, to Old St. Mary's, the oldest church in Cincinnati, which is a very German church. They are the only church in the States that still has a regular German Mass every Sunday, which we used to go to, and is a very German church. The legend is that the bricks were baked in the ovens of the parishioners to actually build the church, which is why they're not the same size. A very beautiful church. It's where we got married. Doesn't have air conditioning, but it's gorgeous, so I don't care.
Everyone complained about that. Mm-hmm. Not to us, though.
Bockfest Hall was a thing at that point, which is where Christian Moorline's tap room used to be, because they closed that down during their transition period that they're in right now. So they did a little bit of stuff at Bockfest Hall, but the main things were happening at a bunch of bars throughout over the Rhine. And they had a parade, but the city was like, you can't shut down roads for this parade. So they had to do the parade mostly on the sidewalk. And all the bars that were participating in Bockfest were encouraged to make a float for it, which started off the parade. Unbeknownst to them, they were going to have 4 to 6 inches of snow that weekend. So they kind of dealt with that because there was another year, and I want to say it was in the mid-aughts.
It was recent.
Yeah, it was semi-recent, but it wasn't like super recent. It was the mid-aughts. They had a really, really bad snowstorm that basically shut down the city, but people still showed up to Bockfest because it's Cincinnati. Basically, Cincinnatians are crazy. Don't get between them and their beer if you can avoid it. And so they still showed up. And the tradition became that on Friday during the parade, they would also burn a snowman effigy. So they've done that ever since. And we haven't gotten snow that bad since they started doing that. We have had some cold Bockfests. We did some 5Ks that were pretty chilly. But the Bock beer will warm you up, so that's okay.
Yeah, so basically, Bockfest is an excuse to have big-ass party in the middle of winter when nothing's going on. There's no sports. It's this period where Super Bowl's over, but spring training hasn't started yet in baseball. So nothing's going on. Everyone's bored. We want to go outside, but it's cold, it's snowy, it's awful out. So we created this festival called Bockfest. And it's actually pretty cool because it's rooted in German history. And that's where the beer comes in. It's this traditional beer. You have the stats up on what it is.
So Bock beer is a bottom fermenting lager, typically between 5 and 8%. Very few IBUs, which is where you get your like bitter hops. That's where your IBUs come in. It's very malty, and it's a light copper to brown. It comes from the Einbeck region of Germany. And as I said earlier, Bock means billy goat in German. So 9 times out of 10, when you see packaging for it, they include a goat somewhere in the packaging.
And it was brewed, and this is an urban legend that was told to us.
By a monk.
Yes, by a monk. So it must be true.
Must be true.
So Bock beer originated when, and again, this is an urban legend, the monks in Germany were like, during Lent, they were fasting. They're like, man, I really want to, I wanted something to drink,
Well, they wanted something that was going to help sustain them.
Something to sustain them, right.
So they're like, if we just throw a ton of malts into this, let's see what happens, because that'll make it nice and hearty, so we'll have some calories in us so we can get through the day where we can't eat anything.
So they invented this Bock beer, which is, like you said, this very malty, thick, bready, liquid bread, they call it, beer. And they're like, we should drink this through Lent to sustain us. But first, we should probably get permission from the Pope.
Because at this point, the Pope is basically the king and is the one that says whether or not things are okay. So let's take a cask of this, or a keg of this, send it to the Pope, say, hey, can we drink this during Lent? Like, is this okay? Because we really would like to do that so we can not pass out or whatever.
So this was before automobiles. This is
before refrigeration. I think this was after the point where they had their magic beer wand because they didn't know that yeast was a thing, but I'm not quite sure.
This was a long time ago, in other words. So it took a long time for them to get it to the Pope, but they finally arrived in Rome, in Vatican City, Rome. And they're like, Mr. Pope, sir, we would like to drink this liquid.
That was their exact wording.
Yes. I don't know how you address the Pope. Sir Pope? Mr. Pope? I don't know. Please don't strike me down in anger. But they're like, Mr. Pope, sir, we would like to drink this liquid. He's like, well, let me taste it, just to make sure. And so they brought it to him, and it was spoiled. You can imagine. It was not what they had intended it to be. The
beer had skunked.
Yes, it was gross. And he's like, you want to drink this? It's disgusting. And they're like, yes, we want to drink it. It's like, if you can take it, then do it.
I'm pretty sure they just sent the keg with a letter, like they themselves didn't go with it as well. But yeah, the legend is Pope said, this gross, drink as much of it as you want. And that's how we got Bock beer. And then crazy people decided, let's make a Doppelbock and make it even stronger. And that's how we got the delicious drink that we're drinking right now.
Yes, it is delicious. So I'm going to drink to that.
Prost. So, over the years, we have participated in Bockfest in many capacities. Because we were parishioners at Old St. Mary's, occasionally we would be there on Sunday when they would tap the first keg of Bock beer. Because they would send a keg to Old St. Mary's the Sunday before Bockfest was to start so that it could get blessed. And then we would start the festivities off actually that Sunday. And then Friday is the big hoopla at Arnold's that ends at Old St. Mary's, where Old St. Mary's will have a fish fry.
Yeah, they usually have a fish fry to raise money, as all the Catholic churches do.
Yeah. Now, this is our disclosure. We have never actually attended the parade or any of the festivities on Friday. We haven't been that crazy. We typically go either on Saturday or on Sunday. So when we first started going to Bockfest, we went on Sundays because we danced with the Donauschwab and Schuhplattlers. And the Einstein dancers dance on Saturday. The Schuhplattlers dance on Sunday. So we would go up there typically after church. A few years we would go to church, go to the Eagle, get some lunch, and then go to Bockfest, all in our costumes.
I miss the Eagle.
I do too. In the before times, before everybody knew about it. And it's like, okay, if you don't get there exactly when they open, good luck getting a table.
There's always a wait now.
The first few years we went to Bockfest, everything happened in basically one chamber of Bockfest Hall, which was just a complete open space, everything cinder block, so everything echoes, terrible acoustics, but it was fun. And you'd usually be able to find a seat pretty easily. You wouldn't have to wait too long for a beer. There were no bathrooms inside, so everything was a porta potty. And they would have some little tables set up for some local groups, and that would be in the malt room, but there would be nobody in the malt room other than people visiting those tables, unless if you were coming up from a tour, because the tour was on a very rickety staircase, or at least a very janky looking staircase from a very janky looking hole in the ground. And then people would come up from the tour and go to Bockfest Hall. And then Christian Moorline bought the building and turned it into a tap room / brew space. So that started to expand things out a bit. And there was a few years of confusion because they had to have 2 separate liquor licenses, one for the tap room and one for Bockfest Hall. So if you got a beer in Bockfest Hall, you couldn't take it into the tap room. And if you got a beer in the tap room, you couldn't take it into Bockfest Hall.
And then later there was the issue of you can't bring outside beer inside and inside beer outside.
So eventually they figured out the liquor license where if you were in the building, you could carry a beer around. But then it became if you got a beer in a tent outside, you couldn't bring it inside. I think they eventually worked that one out too. But so we got to slowly watch this event expand every year, where we went from parking across the street in a little gravel lot to dance at Bockfest to now we have to park in a parking garage a few blocks away to guarantee we have a spot and then take a shuttle to actually get to Bockfest Hall if we're not going to walk.
Yeah, it was crazy that, like you said, we parked in that lot And then a few years later, that lot became a tent because so many people were coming that they needed an outside tent.
And we went from dancing in front of the stage and having, like, it's not a great dance floor. Sometimes they've got power cords going through the middle of it, which is very annoying. But, like, you would have some space because there weren't a ton of people there to, okay, now we actually have to make people move out of our way to give us space so we can dance. But then since the last few years, starting in 2016, we started participating in at the time, Christian Moorline Beer Series. Now it is the TQL Beer Series, where it's 3 races that take place at 3 different events across the city through the year. So there's a 5K during Bockfest. There's the Little Kings Mile, that's now the 50 West Mile, that is the first race to happen during Flying Pig Weekend. And then there's the Hootapole 7K or 14K that happens Oktoberfest weekend. We started, quote unquote, running these races / walking them for 2 reasons. 1, you get 2 beers at the end. And 2, I got points on my insurance that translated into Amazon money for doing races. So I was like, we can do these. These are fun. We're going to half of these events anyway, because we go to at that time, we went to Downtown Oktoberfest. Now, not so much. Downtown Oktoberfest has exploded as well over the last few years. But sticking with Bockfest, we started going Bockfest on Saturdays. The first year we did the race, which I want to say was the 3rd or 4th year they had actually started doing the race. It wasn't a super ton of people, but it was pretty well attended. And then 2020 was the last year we did it. It was just wall-to-wall people. It was insane.
It was a lot of people.
Yeah.
It was Leap Day 2020, and we knew COVID was a thing because we were nervous with Lily, and we left her at home because of that. Because we, like you said, we done this race for however long, 3 years, 4 years. We always saw the people with the strollers, and we always thought, that's what we want to be. We want to be with the people with the strollers.
Yeah.
The super dads running.
I mean, it was kind of cold, too. So it was cold, and then it was the massive amount of people. We were like, yeah, let's not bring the child. But, like, the last 2-ish, maybe 3-ish years, we've been of the mind of get our 2 free beers, maybe buy a 5th beer, because it's 2 free beers each. Maybe buy a 5th beer that we'll split, or whoever's not driving will drink. And then we're heading home. Some of the race people leave right away. A lot of them hang out. And then starting at about like noon or 1 o'clock is when you get all of the regular Bockfest people coming in. And it's just the line for the bathroom is ridiculous. The line for the porta potties is ridiculous. The line for beers starts to get ridiculous. We're kind of homebodies / why am I going to wait 20 minutes to get a beer when I can just crack open a beer at home people? So we run our race, hang out a bit more, and then go home. But last year was one of my favorite quotes from Bockfest. And I remember this because it popped up in my timeline as my on this day memories, where we're hanging out before the race, because you got to get there a bit early to make sure that you're actually getting there in time. And this woman next to us is talking to her friend. The race starts at 9 a.m., so it's probably like 8:30-ish at this point. She's like, there are people that are already drinking. Like, what is this? And I'm like, Cincinnati?
Yeah, they do sell you beer before.
Yeah, they're not manned by like a ton of people, but if you're like, here, I have a beer ticket, they're like, yeah, the taps are open. Sure, I'll get you a beer. Yeah, so then the other big thing, too, was, like, they would have, like, maybe 5 or 6 different beers on draft. The majority of them would be Christian Moorline beers. They'd have their Shangling Bock, which is the homebrew competition winner from the year before. And then their Emancipator, which is the Christian Moorline Bock.
That is my favorite Bock beer.
It's a yummy Bock beer. And maybe another Bock or 2 from other breweries, but not a whole lot. As opposed to last year, they had inside beers and 2 separate tents that had beers. Wait, no.
I think you're mashing them together. There was a tent.
There was a tent with a band, and then there was a tent with beer and a band.
Yeah.
But so...
in previous years. Last year, they didn't have that.
Last year they didn't have the second band tent. So inside is still Christian Moorline brands. But then outside, they've got like 12 plus different Bock beers from different local breweries. So you can get Listerman's Bock, you can get Saunders Bock, you can get Taft's Bock, you can get just about every Bock that's available in the city until they tap out of it, which they will do by Sunday because some of the breweries can only make so much beer at a time. So they can't give a ton of kegs, or people know here are the 2 that you need to get no matter what. And those are usually the first 2 that go out.
Man, I do miss it. Now that I just sitting here talking about it, I'm remembering.
I miss like the early Saturday morning, kind of getting your pick of whatever Bock beer that you want. Because I remember the first year that we did the race, they kind of funnel you away from the race where it's get your medal, get your banana, get your water. And those lines move pretty fast. And then you get to the slower line that is, here are beers in cans. And then you get your even slower line for your cheese coney that most people give up on. But it was, we have to get a Hootapole. Sometimes they would have cans of Emancipator there as well. Then we learned, you can use your beer ticket on draft beer, which is really what you want to do. So last year we got 4 different kinds of Bock beer because we're like, okay, which breweries do we want to hit up? Let's find the ones that we like. And so that's one of the ways that we actually get the majority of our Bock beer.
And it's the only time of the year where you can get Bock beer. It's this one weekend out of the year, maybe 2 weekends.
Yeah. I mean, because like they do like the halfway to St. Patrick's Day stuff sometimes. Like I'm kind of the same mind with the Gnarly Gnome where like if they would do like a halfway to Bockfest, like here we'll just brew like a batch of Bock beer. I'd be totally down for that. But then like 10 other people would be, and then like nobody else would drink it and it'd go to waste.
We would be drinking Bock beer at Oktoberfest if that happened.
I mean, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, there's just something about drinking Bock beer on draft in the winter, you know?
It will quote unquote warm you up, even though alcohol does the opposite. Mythbusters did an episode on that.
No, I love it. I love drinking that beer just because, like I said, it's the one time a year where it's possible.
So I want to talk about the other before times. Well, before we start wrapping this up. So before kids, for us and our friends that used to live one street over. So we have friends that are also in the Shoe Plottlers, also go to Old St. Mary's, and also live in our neighborhood. And we got done with church. We decide we're going to go to the Eagle for lunch because we can do that because it's still, this is like 2016-ish. Because I want to say it was like right after we got married. So we have to dance on Sunday. So we're like, we'll just make a day of it. We have no kids. We have no dogs. We have no responsibilities. So we go to church, go to lunch with our friends, and then hitch a ride with them to get closer to Bockfest. End up having to park like a block or 2 away. We were going to German dance.
We're in our costume at this point.
We're in our German costumes. Whether or not it's the ones we're going to ultimately dance in, doesn't matter. We're in lederhosen and dirndls. And so we all pile out of the car, and there's this group of people walking by, and they stop. And the guy says, wait, you are totally dressed up for this tour. Get in with these guys. So we join one of the historic brewing tours halfway through. So the first half of the tour is surface streets. And it's, this building used to be this building used to be here, talking about old breweries that used to be in Cincinnati. And then they take you to the gem of the tour, which is the lagering tunnels that are in the depths of Cincinnati. Because you had all of these breweries and refrigeration wasn't a thing, in order to get your consistent cool temperatures to lager all year long, you just dug a hole in the ground or dug into the side of a hill, which is what some other breweries did in the area, and create these sub-basements. So we get to go through all of these lagering tunnels, and we're like, we have like a hint of what it is that we're currently doing. But like, we were basically adult napped because like, we don't know exactly where we're going to end up. We don't know if we're going to make it back to the hall in time in order to actually dance. We're just kind of hoping that we will. And we did, so that was good. Lori didn't have to murder us. But we end up in these basements, and you get to see all of this awesome brickwork that they did to create these huge vaulted ceilings. They had chutes, basically chimneys, that would go up through the whole building that was above it so you could get some fresh air, which eventually they turned into garbage chutes. So you have these gorgeous log rain tunnels that are then full of piles of trash, but they're all connected too. So while we're still 2 or 3 blocks away from Bockfest, we don't go to the surface again, and we managed to get into Bockfest Hall. And that was really cool. Really glad we got to do that. Now, I did get to do that as well with my beer tasting class. That one was a bit more, that was actually, I got to do the whole tour. Because we started off at an old brewery that recently burned down. Though I don't know how much of it they were trying to renovate it, which is how it ended up burning down. Where they, instead of digging into the ground, they dug into the side of the hill to make their log grain cellars. And then we did end up in Christian Moorline's tap room at the end of that tour. And that was really cool.
That was a really awesome memory for me as well. I mean, just going down there and seeing the history, like you said, the lagering tunnels. And lagering is a very complex process for beer. You know, you have your lagers and your ales, and I don't want to get too detailed into this, but if you're brewing a lager, like a true lager, you need to crash the temperature of the wort, which is the unfermented beer. So you crash the temperature by, well, these days we have tools for that. We have refrigeration, we have all these kinds of things. But back then they put the wort, as it's called, in these lagering tunnels. And we got to see all that firsthand.
And unfortunately, we didn't get to see the elaborate elevators that they had as well. I think one of the places had the remnants of an elevator where what they would actually use to get the kegs up and down out of those tunnels. But a separate trip that was not Bockfest related, we actually got to talk to Greg Hartman, who is the one who brought back the Christian Moorline brands. He didn't bring back Hootapole. Other people brought back Hootapole. But he's the one that purchased the recipes and got the brand going again for Christian Moorline.
Arguably, he is the one who launched the craft beer scene in Cincinnati.
I mean, Dan Listerman will always be the father or grandfather of craft beer in Cincinnati.
Right. I mean, Greg is up there, though.
Yeah, Greg was the one who made sure that the craft beer community worked together. But we were talking to him, and we're like, well, you have these lagering cellars underneath your building that we're in right now. Do you have any plans to use them? And he said, well, I can't talk about that, but it'd be nice if we could. And so I'm really bummed now that they're no longer brewing in Cincinnati. Or the brewing's going to be moving out of Cincinnati, because he brought everything back into Cincinnati. His goal was to get all of Hootapole, Christian Moorline, Little Kings, Shane Lane, all of that brewed exclusively in Cincinnati.
You heard that it's moving out of Cincinnati?
I thought I did. I don't know.
I haven't actually heard a lot of coverage in the news about this, but my understanding is that it's like a contract brew situation.
Which a lot of companies are getting into now, which, I mean, especially from a financial standpoint, makes sense. Because if you're not sure what exactly your business is going to do, if there's somebody that you can trust to brew more of your beer for you, to take some of the strain off of you without you having to invest in the capital for new equipment, it makes sense. And then it helps keep them alive too, because, well, if they've got tanks that are just sitting empty, that's not money going out the door or coming in the door. So if they can, even if they're brewing someone else's beer, they can make some money off of that.
Well, we actually have some listener feedback from last week's episode, if you can believe it.
I mean, I totally believe it, because we've totally posted podcasts so far.
Well, it's here. If you can hear that. It's a legit paper. I printed it out in our printer that we own.
Where does this printer live, and when did we get it?
This comment is from Karen from Target. And Karen says, "You guys have 2 kids under 2 and 2 dogs? Are you crazy?" Do you have a response to that?
Yes. Yes, we are. And that's not the only reason why. But I'll let you think that is.
Okay, then. At least you're honest about it.
There's no hiding these things.
Well, you too can be like Karen from Target. If you like what you hear, please take a moment to leave a rating and review.
We'd really appreciate it. And you can also help us grow by spreading the word about this podcast, by sharing it with your friends, your family, your neighbor down the street, your dentist, that weird guy that just won't leave you alone. He can't bother you if he's busy listening to our podcast.
Is this guy that won't leave you alone? He may also be your dentist. You never know.
I mean, dentists do like to talk to you while you can't actually talk back to them. Though I did hear from a dentist that they are actually pretty good at deciphering what it is that you're saying. And it's more just they're trying to make things less awkward than just silence as they're rooting around in your mouth. But it's still really weird.
Well, that does it for this week's show. Thanks so much for listening. And with that, I'm Joe.
And I'm Caroline.
See you next time on Craft Parenting Podcast. See ya.
Peace.